Hi, everybody. So today we're going to be going over the end of World War I and sort of the culmination of everything we've been talking about this unit. So last class we talked about how the U.S. entered the war for three primary reasons: the sinking of the Lusitania, the Zimmerman telegram, and close economic and political ties with Great Britain. The U.S. enters the war, and the U.S. hasn't been fighting for almost 4 years like the rest of Europe has. So the U.S. comes in with these troops who are, they're pretty on point. They aren't tired of war. This is new. They're excited. And it injects this sort of strength into the allies, which are France, Great Britain, was Russia, but remember, Russia got knocked out from the revolution that happened after the Battle of Tannenberg. So the U.S. comes in and pretty much turns the tide of the war. So Germany and Austria-Hungary, the Ottomans, all of those people who've been fighting on the Central Powers side for just as long as the Allies have been, are tired, and really this is the end of the war. So the U.S. enters at the tail end of the war. They enter in April of 1917, and by January of 1918, Woodrow Wilson, who was president at the time, is presenting his 14 points, which is his plan to end the conflicts which led to the outbreak of war. So remember, that's going to be the militarism, it's going to be the alliances, the imperialism, and the nationalism. Those four main issues that drove Europe to war for so long. It was proposed by U.S. President Woodrow Wilson. He was president during World War I. He stressed the importance of self-determination, freedom of the seas, and reduction of military spending. And he called for the creation of a world organization to promote peace and prevent future wars. And this is going to be solidified in the Treaty of Versailles that ends the war officially. The League of Nations becomes this world organization meant to promote peace and prevent future wars. However, as we'll see, the U.S. does not end up ratifying the Treaty of Versailles, so they do not join the League of Nations. So the Treaty of Versailles. In 1919, the Big Four met in Paris to negotiate the treaty. Lloyd George of Britain, Emmanuel Orlando of Italy, Jorge Clemenceau of France, and Woodrow Wilson of the U.S. Met at the Paris Peace Conference, just outside of Paris at the Palace of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles is drafted by primarily the leaders of England, France, and President Woodrow Wilson. The Central Powers were not invited. It was partially based on Wilson's 14 points. The United States, France, and Great Britain dominated the meeting. France and England and Britain had one or two primary goals. They wanted to punish Germany because they felt that Germany was at fault for the war. And they wanted to make sure that Germany would never be a threat. The U.S. or Woodrow Wilson, they wanted to promote self-determination, which will lead to the creation of these different states that are less ethnically diverse. So the Slavics, who wanted their own country to be ruled by people like them, get their own state. They're no longer under the Hungarian Empire. And also, Woodrow Wilson wanted to create the League of Nations. Now, in terms of the Treaty of Versailles, Germany had to accept responsibility for the war. And this is going to be one of the main causes and main instigators that allow for Adolf Hitler to come to power in the 1930s and into the 40s, eventually leading to World War II. Germany lost a lot of land. Two new countries were created, Czechoslovakia and Poland, and they lost their overseas colonies. They also had to destroy all of their offensive military equipment, so like their tanks and their planes, and they were banned from having military troops in this sort of darker yellow striped area called the Rhineland. It's a demilitarized zone. That means they could not have troops or any sort of military presence in this area. They also had to pay war reparations, which is they had to pay for all of the damages, and this plunges Germany into a massive, even more massive than the Great Depression we see in the United States in the 1930s. And this upset a lot of Germans, and it planted the seeds for future conflicts. Created a lot of resentment. But the League of Nations was created. The goal was to settle problems through negotiations rather than war. It would use economic and military cooperation to deal with aggressor states. But the United States Senate voted not to join the League of Nations. So even though Woodrow Wilson created the League of Nations, they didn't join. The US did not join the League of Nations, which was thought into existence and created by Woodrow Wilson. And some other minor to our studies are results of the World War I. There's the breakup of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire into a couple other states: Austria, Hungary, Yugoslavia, and Czechoslovakia. We have the breakup of the Ottoman Empire. You see Syria, Palestine, Transjordan, Iraq, and Turkey become new territories. And all of these territories, and including portions of Turkey, are going to be under a mandate system. That just means European powers are colonizing them with a different name. The bulk of what, like the military stronghold and the power stronghold in the Ottoman Empire, becomes Turkey, and they do play a role later on in World War II because they are also upset. And even though Russia was on our side, because we want these different ethnicities, these different nationalities, these different peoples to rule themselves, 3 countries are created from Russia, and they lose Poland. So Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia are created from Russian territory. And all of this ends up with a lot of people unhappy. Germany's upset, Italy's upset, Russia's upset, and even Japan is upset that the Allies did not recognize their claims to land in China. So we signed the Treaty of Versailles. The US doesn't ratify it, but World War I is over, and the US returns to an isolationist policy. Now, for your classwork for this, the only thing you really need to worry about is your warm-up and the quizzes. You'll do the quizzes until you get 12,000 points. Have a good one.